kind of picks did you use back in the day, guitar picks, and how many did you experiment with, and how did you kind of land on one, and why was that your favorite pick?
So back when I first started, I knew nothing about guitar picks, just like everybody else, except, here's a guitar pick, use it. Thin, medium, heavy, extra heavy. Pick was brought to my attention by Eric Johnson, who used the Dunlop Jazz 3. Yes. You got those?
I'm looking for one. Let's see if I got one.
Yeah.
There it is. The Jazz 3.
That's the one. It's got the point on it. And then there was another one that was rounded over, but yeah. So I ended up using those for a while because, Eric said, he could hear the difference in tone. And I was like, what? You could hear the difference in tone in a pick? That's crazy. But you know what? As time went by, yes, I experimented with everything. And if I could go into my room right now, I got a shoebox full of them.
What are you talking about, Mark? What do you mean?
That was what I used back in the day. And then as time went on and I started to get into blues stuff, and my hands kind of, my grip changed, and I started to go to Fender heavies.
Okay. Yep.
And I used those a lot. And then what I used to do was I would file down the end because I didn't like the point. So it was almost like using the shoulder of the pick. Yeah, so I experimented a lot with different things like that. These days, as of today, I'm kind of going back and forth between the Fender Heavy and the Jazz 3.
Okay.
And now the Jazz 3's got a like a grip on it. That's really a great design. It kind of stays put. I truly believe there is a difference in tone in picks.
I'm with you.
I hear it. It takes a little getting used to after a while, when you're holding a big pick and then you grab this little small one. And I'm a big believer of I've even gone as far. I mean, we can talk about pick stuff forever, but I've gone as far as different grips and holding it, back in here and holding it like this and everything else. But I think inevitably what you want to achieve is you want to be able to do everything you have to do with the pick in one spot. Don't move it around. Find the one that works for you. Find something that's comfortable, and the pick placement, the grip, keep it there the same time, no matter what you're playing.
I'm reading one came from Nick.
What's up, Nick?
Could you discuss the basics behind your touring rig? So amp, pedals, and/or rack effects. And I think this dovetails, and we can talk about it into the ADA thing. But yeah, what was your live touring rig like in comparison to what you were in the studio with?
We talked about in the interview, it was tube amps. It was Marshalls.
Yep.
It was not that ADA. The ADA came afterwards. It was a new product at the time, and it was like one of the first of its kind. So it was very exciting. It was like, wow, I want one. And of course, we got it and it sounded great. And I think I remember I had a rack and there was a power amp in there that powered the ADA. And then I had a Roland digital delay and maybe some reverb and, stuff like that, a few pedals on the floor. And I used the ADA live only for a little while, every now and then, but I kind of remember getting away from it.
This one's from Donnie. He said he got to talk to you a few years back outside of Guitar Center in Albuquerque. He said there was a lady giving you grief about returning a Marshall head.
Oh my God, dude. I remember that. Holy smokes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in there just trying to return this Marshall that I bought from him. It just sounded horrible. And she was giving me a hard time. And this guy, I noticed he kept looking at me. And then I walked out in the parking lot and he was, hey man, are you the guy from XYZ? And I was like, no way, dude. Talked for a while in the parking lot. It's good to hear your name come up again. Thanks.
That's funny. Because he wrote the same thing. He goes outside. He goes, wow, you know who I am? And you're just saying something now? That was so good. He has a two-parter. Okay. Donnie says, one is, it's probably kind of cliche, but if you had to give advice to a younger you about a life in music, what would you go back and tell the younger you about a life in music or the music business and all that?
Surround yourself with the right people. Very important that when you're that young and that vulnerable, influenced by so many different areas, you need somebody who could help you keep you on track, make the right decisions for you. So I think that's one of them I would definitely do.
What is your take on the craze of the whole digital amp modeling that's going on?
I love it because it's easy, they make it easy for you, and it sounds pretty darn close. However, I'm old school, so I'm still kind of on the fence with it. And, like you and I talked, there's nothing like your pants legs blowing in the wind when you pushing air out of 412 cabinet, and the paint's peeling off the walls. But I think for the most part, they've gotten very, very close. And I would imagine not too far off in the future that they're probably going to incorporate more realistic things to make it even better. I just think it's going to get better and better. And boy, it's just so practical. It's just awesome. You know what else too, John? There's so many factors that go into an amp. I mean, not only the wood of the cabinet and the type of tubes, old stock, new stock, the capacitors in there, all this kind of stuff. The speakers play such a huge part. The room that you're recording it in, the mic placement, all that is so crazy and so hard to figure out that, these new systems like, Fractal and those guys, they incorporated all that stuff into it. It makes it a lot easier to get closer to that whole vibe.
This next one comes from Albert. Albert says he wants to begin by thanking you for your music, and as a guitar player, you've had a significant impact on him. And he said this is not exactly a question, but it's funny. Mark and I talked about this last night too, about your yellow Charvel that was on that reverb listing that was stripped down.
Yes.
He said so. He sent me a link to the reverb listing that you and I are both aware of, so we're talking about the same thing. But he said that one that's listed as yours, he said, I'm not sure it's true or not, but is that actually your guitar? Do you know for sure if that's your yellow one that got stripped down and was for sale 4 years ago? Or he said he just wanted to see if the rumors were true or the listing was right. And he said if it is your old guitar, it'd be amazing for you to have it back and restore it and play it again. And I agree, but I don't know. Do you know for sure if that's the one?
I don't, but you did mention some key points. So you said about 4 years ago, which I remember somehow getting contacted by a guitar store somewhere that was asking me to verify it, and they sent pictures, and I couldn't tell at that time. It kind of looked like it, and it was totally stripped. It wasn't yellow. It was natural raw wood. Yep. I'm not sure.
I'm going to read you this listing again because this is interesting. I don't know if it'll jog a memory, but he says, I bought this guitar from a guy, and when I purchased it, he mentioned that in the mid-90s, Marc Diglio of XYZ lived in his apartment complex and sold him a bunch of gear when he was leaving town. After some research, I'm 100% convinced it's a yellow guitar pictured with Marc. The seller told me it was stripped and exactly like it is now when he bought it from Marc.
No.
Okay.
No, never stripped that guitar down.
Okay. So on this one, he said there's yellow paint remnants. By the way, did that yellow one have a neck pickup or not?
Jeez, I don't remember.
We'll have to look at the photos. But anyway, this one does. There were case stickers that included an XYZ sticker. But anyway, Maple Board, Floyd. Was it a Floyd on there or a Kaler? Or do you remember which? If it was
it was a Floyd. I think it was black.
Yeah, this one's black with gold fine tuners on it.
And you know what? If I'm not mistaken, and I have no idea how I remember this, and it could have been replaced, but I remember losing one of the Allens at the back, where it locks down the string or something down there. And there should be one on there that I put in and it stands out because it's different than the rest of them. There's one. I don't know if it's still on there.
Oh my gosh. Let me see if I can find this.
I don't know where it would be.
Oh, wow. Oh, I got to say, is it the low E string? Because it's long. This is on you're talking about the back of the bridge, right?
Either that or somewhere else on that Floyd Rose. I can't remember exactly, John, but I replaced something.
This is cool. I'm going to send you over this listing. This is really cool if you want to see it. I just texted it to you. It's got a case. There's a bunch of ADA stickers on it. There's 102.7 WNEU FM. It has your name on the neck pocket. Wow. Ooh, it was yellow on the inside because they didn't strip inside the humbucker area. So that's still yellow. And this was a Jackson. And in the picture that you're playing with Terry, it's a Jackson. So this we must have been calling it a yellow Charvel the whole time. It was a yellow Jackson. Well, I'll tell you what, the inside of the humbucker looks yellow like yours. So it's
starting to bring back some memories, man. It really is. You know what? I'm looking in the case, and because I was too lazy to take the Floyd the whammy bar off, we cut that out to make a little pocket for it. You know what? I'm kind of guessing. Wait a minute. That strap, that's a seat belt. That is mine. That is my guitar. I remember I had to go to the junkyard to get some parts for my car. And I thought about this in my head about taking a seatbelt and screwing it into the back and screwing it into the front so that when it hangs over your shoulder and you click it together, it would have, Mercedes-Benz or Corvette. And I was looking for one like that. And I ended up finding that one. That was the only one I could find. But, this is telling me that, this is... And then those stickers.
So in the neck pocket says 44. Is that 88 or 87?
That looks like I wrote my name on that for some reason. That's weird.
You see that 4488?
Yes.
That's interesting. In the neck pocket, 4488.
And there's your yellow.
See that yellow? Yeah. This might be your guitar.
Yeah. No, I'm going to have to say,
That's it. Wild.
Crazy.
Finally, that's been one that's been asked about on the internet for years.
I wonder if the original humbucker is still in there because that pickup was amazing. I think it was the Jeff Beck I had told you.
Yeah, it was that JB. If you look in that case picture, it looks like somebody had an EMG there at one time, but it's out. It says EMG 85.
I experimented with EMGs back then.
Maybe that could have been yours. It's still in there. That's wild because that seatbelt's in there. And so,
yeah. Crazy.
Dude, isn't that nuts? That's fun. Oh, we solved the mystery today. It's great.
What's it going for anyway?
Well, that one sold 4 years ago. When it sold, it said, let's see what it sold for. I think it was listed for $1,800. Yeah, $1,840 shipping. If anybody knows where it is, let me know because I will buy it and refinish it for Mark. We can do that one together. Then you'll have 2 yellow guitars. Okay, next question. Jack. Now, Jack, he listed 7 questions, so we're not going to do all 7, but he did say my favorite questions are on top. We'll do the first one and the last one. These are kind of cool back and forth. Number 1, what was the story behind the song Rock and Roll Girl for that TV music video contest?
I know the song Rock and Roll Girl. It was a demo. I don't recall TV music contest, though. That's...
Okay, we can skip that one. Oh, here's a good one. Jack asks, let's see, are there any songs that did not make the final cut for the Hungry album? And if so, were there ones that you personally would have liked to be included or on any album? I guess we can open it that you guys didn't make the final cut for the album, but you're like, man, looking back, that should have made the album. Was there anything like that?
There was a few. I don't recall exactly which ones they were. Some of them perhaps ended up on the Forbidden Demos record. I know a lot of them from, before the first album came out ended up on there. I remember the only thing I remember about the Hungry record was we did a version of The Temptations' Losing You. The one that the Rod Stewart did with Faces or something.
Yes.
His fade in, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We butchered it, so we left it off there.
I'll get another one in for Jack. Jack, you got quite a few in. What is your favorite amp that you've gotten to play with in your career? If you had a number 1 amp, what would it be?
Oh my God, Jack. That's tough to say. I have owned so many amplifiers. I kick myself for not still having them. I think I've had almost every vintage Fender that came out, pretty much, almost. I had a 65 Deluxe Reverb, one of my favorite. Classic. I still have a 66 Super Reverb. Awesome.
Which is my, aside from my, I had a twin reverb that I had to sell, but it was when Sweetwater did that wine red
Yes.
Cabinet with the gold, and it was a Sweetwater exclusive. I bought that a year before, well, right actually in the beginning of COVID, and I ended up having to sell it because it just wasn't getting used. But that clean sound on that amp was just, and you know me, I'm a super reverb geek, so yeah, keep going.
Just amazing amplifier, one of my favorite. I had probably another one of my favorite was a 1953 Fender Super in the Tolex finish. With the brown cloth grill cloth on it, 210s. That thing was smoking. As a matter of fact, I sold it to a friend of mine. I needed some cash. He bought it. He fell in love with it. Then it came in one day to the shop to get fine-tuned, and I played through it, and I was like, oh, my God, I missed this amp. So I called him, and he said, well, yeah, I'll sell it back to you. So I bought it back to him, and then I moved it again, so I wanted to keep it in the family, so I sold it back to him, and he said to me, whenever you want to buy it back, just let me know. So, yeah, that thing's floating around. That's a great amp. I've had all the boutique amps. I've had Bad Cats, and I've had Category 5, and I had Comet, and just on and on and on, Mesa Boogies and so many different Marshalls. One of my favorite from a kid was the Marshall JMC 800. I got it brand new in 1981, with a 412 slant, and that just sounded unbelievable.
Man, it is hard. It is hard to beat a JCM 800. I'm serious. Like I know Marshall has had a long history of amps, but my generation, what I grew up listening to, like, without really, yeah. And I've heard all the mods of them, and I love all the mods. It's like, I think it's like if you have a great canvas, what you can paint on that thing, it's like, I absolutely love it. Yeah.
Another one of the Fenders that I owned was one of the Drip Edge 1968 Vibrolux, which was killer. Yeah, I wish I still had that. That was a good little light, loud amp. I did get a chance to play through a Dumble, and that was mind blowing.
What did you think about the Dumble?
I thought it was great. We couldn't really crank it up because we were in a place where we had to keep the volume down, and I was playing a 1959 original Les Paul through it. So, I thought it was killer. But for $400,000 for the combo, I'd say, a little out of my league, but yeah, nice.
GP Morris said he watched, you and I talked about this, the Off to the Sun live clip from 91.
Yes.
And he said, what effects were you using live at that time? I know we kind of covered the live rig, but was there anything different on that live track, or just kind of the normal live stuff we talked about?
Normal live stuff. It was Boss Effects, so probably the red delay, or maybe my rack with that Roland delay, some reverb, the Boss OD1 pedal, the yellow one.
Yep.
And that's about it, yeah.
And then Louis asked, so we got a lot of questions. I just want to make sure I cover it for the last time. So the ADA MP1 was briefly mentioned. Was it ever used in the studio, strictly for live use, one or the other, both?
No, strictly live. Never used it in the studio.
I do have one. This is from your wife. She wanted me to ask you, can you tell me how to hard boil an egg?
Hey, Siri. Could you tell me how to hard boil an egg, please?
She told me, she's like, you got to ask him that for me. I said, all right, I'll get you the inside joke. Gerardo on Facebook asks, do you ever wish you could reamp your guitar tracks from the first XYZ album through that more in preamp? Because you love obviously you love the sound on Hungry from you and I talking about that in the interview.
Yeah, you know what, man? Great question. So, lately I've been listening to a lot of the recordings from both records. It comes up and I pull up full album and they're back to back. So I open them up and I'm listening to XYZ1. I was like, man, what a big difference between Hungry.
Yeah.
And yes, I do. I wish that I had that sound, back on the first album, but it just, it happens when it happens, I mean, it was a process of, I think we talked about this, John, the first interview, where you're in the studio, your first record, you're nervous as shit. You really don't know what you're doing. You're just relying on everybody else who's been there before to help you. And that's the best you can do, is just get it to where, okay, we did it, and I wish I was more knowledgeable back then. Yes, it would have been better.
Andy asked, why did you decide to leave XYZ in the music business for so many years? I think he means specifically the music business. Obviously, you and I've talked about you didn't leave music and all that. But he's not the only one that asked this question, so I thought I'd get it in here now. But the question is, why did you decide to leave XYZ and the music business for so many years? And that's from Andy on Instagram.
Hey, Andy. So, good question. We talked about this, a little bit before in John's interview. And it was at the time where, Hungry was out. We were on the road with Foreigner, and then we were off on our own. I was listening to the radio. That's all I had to go by. And I heard, the grunge thing come in, and I heard all these bands, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I also felt at the time that we really didn't even stand a chance, to compete next to Smells Like Teen Spirit or anything like that. So I was all about, I told the guys that I felt that we should just, cut our losses and just call it, we're done with Hungry. Let's maybe move forward in a different direction, or, give it more of a current vibe. Everybody else didn't agree with me, and they said it would pass and wanted to go back on the road. And I didn't want to, so I stood my ground and just said, okay, I wish you guys the best, and that's the way it goes. And
next question we got to get to is, because I got a bunch that are in this vein, but it is, what are your guitar influences?
So this question could take me about a day and a half to answer, so I'm going to try to make it as quick as possible, because I love so many different guitar players, it's not even funny. And me personally, I have to break them up in genre. I need to go, okay, you want to talk about metal? We'll talk about, Tony Iommi, one of my favorite of all time, one of the greatest riff masters, guitar players, technicians, the wizard. Eddie Van Halen, I wouldn't put into heavy metal. I would put him more hard rock. I break things up in the category. But, when I first started out to where I am today, a lot of those guys, most of them are still my favorite players today.
Same.
With some new people that, I've discovered, or old people that I've wasn't listening to back then. But when I first started, I remember this was great. So here I am, a teenager, and just the biggest guys out there were Eddie Van Halen was coming out. Stevie Ray Vaughan was coming out. Eric Johnson was coming out, and Yngwie Malmsteen was coming out. They all played Stratocasters. They all had a completely different bag of tricks, and it was like, oh my God! So that's what we were hit with as guitar players trying to learn. It's like, holy smokes, man! Where do I even begin? And then of course there was people like Gary Moore and Randy Rhoads, and of course the great Michael Schenker and Richie Blackmore, and those guys I love. Southern rock did a lot for me too. I'm a huge Dickie Betts fan, Greg Allman fan, Skinner, all that stuff. The Marshall Tucker Band, Toy Caldwell, who we lost way too soon. A fantastic guitar player, very Dickie Betts, but more jazzy. Over the years, of course, Hendrix was always there. Over the years, I got into a lot of blues, like we talked about. My exposure back when I first started of B.B. King was just huge. And to this day, I mean, I'll still put him on and learn something just by listening to him. He was the master. and then, all the blues guys out there, jazz guys, the Wes Montgomerys and the Pat Martinos and George Bensons. I'm a huge jazz fan. So I listen to a lot of just everything, and it's so helpful, because you take, and here's a little thing too, that sort of, this question segues into is I was never very good at learning solos. Back in the day, we didn't have the technology to slow it down and keep it in pitch. So
Right.
it was rather difficult to do, especially fast stuff. And so I was never really good at learning solos. So what I did was I learned their essence. I learned their what they were saying right at that time. Like another one of my favorite guitar players, Robin Trower.
Yes.
I never learned a Robin Trower lick, but if you give me the right distortion and a one of those deja vibes, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
A hat on the neck pickup, and I just hear Trower. It just comes out. His essence comes out. So the same thing with Jimmy Page, and the same thing with Eddie Van Halen. I never really sat down and learned the solos note for note. So I can't do it. I can't put it in the songs. But when I do it, it makes people think, wow, it kind of sounds like a little bit of Eddie Van Halen mixed with Tony Iommi or somebody like that, because I'm just channeling their vibe. So
yeah. When can we expect new XYZ music? And then somebody asked a secondary question to it that said, if there is new XYZ music, is it the last that we're going to hear that you guys will record together? So it's like this the final release or tracks or album or whatever. So that 2-part question there, but XYZ music in the future.
Yeah, we're all talking. We're all trying to put something together. We've been writing remotely. Right now, I think there's maybe 3 or 4 that we're pretty sure, we've got them to a point where we're happy with them. Still looking for more material. Terry, the singer Terry, is very busy. He's got his kind of side thing going. He's mixed in a lot of different projects as well as Paul too. So, timing and everything is also key. I would expect maybe sometime by the summer of this year that, we might break with one of them. So.
Cool. Somebody was asking, and this is kind of interesting. I had one that was asking about learning the guitar, and they were saying about crossing shapes that you talked in that one video. If someone was learning all these things from the beginning, how would you suggest they go about it? And I know that Marc's offering lessons, so this dovetails into that, but that's a good question. I guess, how would you go about learning kind of the fretboard and how to connect the dots, so to speak?
Well, as a young player, it's one of those things that you do as you're told. Really, what you want to try to do, but your teacher kind of feeds you a direction and tells you to trust them. And that happened to me too. And I learned the fretboard from a very early age. Well, when I first started, anyway, about those 5 different patterns of that scale moving up the fretboard, and then seeing the in between. There's also 5 in between patterns, different fingerings. So you're connecting shape, position 1 and position 2. You've got big stretches now. So now that would be called, you can call it whatever you want. Call it the in between pattern of 1 and 2. Between 2 and 3, there's an in between pattern. Between 3 and 4. So there's all of that. I would also say the kind of music that you want to do is very important, because there's a lot of stuff that is not very useful. I don't know if that's good or bad to say, but it's always great to learn as much as you can, but at the same time, it's sort of eating into the time of doing the stuff that you want to be able to do. So
I just have to back up Marc for a second. This is going to be John's rant. So Marc, you don't have to sign off on this, but I got to rant on this. I think one of the things that we have done a disservice to musicians is when Marc was learning, or even when I was learning, there was no internet. I did not have YouTube. I didn't have any of this shit to do. I couldn't learn it this way. But I think with all that information out there, because we all learn different. Some of us are visual. Some of us are analytical learners. Some of us have to see a pattern. Some of us have photographic memory, whatever. But I think what the disservice has happened is it's someone like, you got to learn every mode. You've got to learn all these things. You have to learn you have to know 2-string, 3-string, 4-string, 5-string. If you want to play like Marc Diglio and be fast, you got to do all these exercises every day. And we get all this stuff. And what happens is, number one, it's overload. There's so much information that someone who's about to pick this guitar up is like, you know what? Forget it. Like, I don't even know where to begin because I'm bombarded on the internet with all this stuff and I don't know where to start. And two, the thing that you said, I think is really important. Tim Pierce, one of the best teachers out there, I think, on the internet, period.
Yes.
Did a wonderful video called The Modes That Matter. And he finally came out and said it. And it's like, look, if you play R&B, country, rock, 99% of the stuff that we play and have played in terms of just contemporary music over the last however many years, you're really playing major, minor, Mixolydian, and Dorian. Like, that's it. I mean, that's really all you're playing. No offense. You're not like delving into Lydian that much or Phrygian or Locrian. You're just not. Like,
no.
But, when you're getting marketed to in the guitar world and you're being sold to, like, well, you got to learn all 7 modes and you got to know all the shapes of all the modes. I'm sorry, but no, you don't. And I just want to tell everybody out there, no, you don't. I get so tired of kids that get overwhelmed when they're already getting overwhelmed by, these phones dinging every 5 seconds, and they're already distracted. And it's like, and even the guitar community is distracting them with, you better know this and you better know this and you better know. And it's like, no, you better just play and love to play and figure out, like you said, bring the essence of these players in, there's something to be said for just learning a solo and then taking just one bar of it and going, I'm going to incorporate that into my playing. And you don't need to know what it's called. And anyway, sorry to take up the Q&A with my rant, but
No, John, you're absolutely right. And yes, I do agree with everything you said. It's a completely different time these days. And there's so much information that available right at your fingertips that, I kind of feel bad for people who really don't know, going to somebody and learning the wrong way or taking the wrong advice. But yeah, who are you? Why did you pick up the guitar? Because your favorite guitar player is, whoever. And learn his stuff. Learn him, learn her, learn the solos, learn the songs, practice them with a band. Digest it, produce it, have it in your file, your memory, you have it. Yep. Now, if you want to move on to the next guy, that's the process.
Yeah.
But don't stray off in the modes. I didn't even know what modes were until, decades later.
At the end of the day, I promise you that a lot of your favorite guitar players were not sitting around going, and now I'm jumping to Mixolydian mode. And I'm not saying that there aren't session players that are like an encyclopedia of theory. And guess what? There are some that may have thought that way, but everybody processes stuff different. Just because your favorite guitar player says, I learned theory at age 11 and I did this, doesn't mean you have to. I think people would find joy in the instrument if they played what they wanted to play and learned what they had to learn when they were ready to learn it, not to be a great guitar player, I have to get a degree in this. Like, does that make sense?
Yes, John, let me just bring up one good point and I'll let it go. But to be able to sing, what's the first thing you need to learn? Well, you got to start with the basics. So I think that's the alphabet, the human language.
Yep. Good point.
So you need to be able to talk to somebody. And as you talk and, you start learning the language and how to emphasize words and how to be quiet and how to be loud and how to be aggressive and how to be passive and all this stuff. Was it ever told to you, well, you need to learn Japanese now, and you also need to learn Korean and French and, whatever else. Look at, who are you? You're an American guy in this case. You want to sing, so now you know the language. And what do you do when you have the words on a piece of paper in front of you? You sing to the music. You let it come out and you let your heart and your soul and your instincts from what you have practiced guide you and just get lost in the moment. Stay focused and anticipate the next thing coming. Timing and good pitch and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Same with guitar.
I'm glad that we got that out because that's
Me
a
too.
rant. That's a rant I've wanted to make for a long time. We know you have a broad taste and knowledge on other genres of music from the interview with John, but if you remember, could you mention a few? This is a good one. A few of the lesser known bands from that era when you guys were touring and recording albums, so 86 to 92, that you thought were great or enjoyed listening to back then. For him, he said Junkyard, Wildside, and Tora Tora. But he was curious, were there bands, playing around the same time that you guys were big fans of their music as well, or guitar playing?
Yeah, no, there was quite a few during the Los Angeles times when I moved to LA. There was, the strip was just booming with every kind of band you can imagine. So there was a lot of great bands. I might be wrong, but I remember I liked a band called Angora. And I think the singer in that band at the time, I didn't know him. But these guys were cool, and the singer had a great voice. And I remember I used to watch these guys at the Whiskey and I was like, wow, yeah, they're really cool. I think the singer went on to be John Corabi, the guy, the Motley Crue guy, and everything else that he's done. Yeah. So, just all these bands, there was probably so many great ones. I remember Lion. Baldridge, and Doug went on to do his thing, and just a lot of things like that. Before then, though, I remember talking to John, and John turned me on to a great band, Heartland, right?
That's right.
Okay, so right. that was, I love hearing bands that I've never heard before. So I threw one at John called Fierce Heart. That came out in the 80s. Great singer and guitar player that never got, what they deserved back then. They were fantastic, the two of them. Just a lot of different kinds of stuff that came out back, in the day that you remember, and sticks with you until somebody jogs your memory. It's like, oh my God, I remember those guys. And
could you elaborate on the songwriting process for both albums? Was it mainly you and Terry? Was it others? Was it everybody? Was it lyrics first, riffs first, a bit of everything? And was it the same process for both albums?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of bands do it different. Everybody, and I talked about this before, sort of invents their a working formula, a template that you guys have that, as a band, and of course you don't have to stick to it. I mean, if somebody comes up with a great title, for instance, Pat had the title "It's a Nice Day to Die." I thought that was smoking at the time.
Yeah, it is. It's still smoking, man. That's awesome.
And I remember we missed out on that too because it was a movie that came out at the same time the album came out, and it was a movie called Flatliners with Kiefer Sutherland.
Yes.
And he walks out on the porch, and he's he's standing there, and he goes, "It's a good day to die." If only he said it was a nice day to die, you could hear that playing in the background. Never happened that way. But anyway, to get back to your question, most of the time I was just always riffing. I was always coming up with stuff and hitting the trusty old cassette player and putting it on there and then taking the cassette out and trying to write on it, saying good stuff from here to here with lines and everything. But if it was really good, if I thought it was special, I would hold on to it and I presented to the guys, and then Terry would jump in and he would create a melody, and then Pat would take over with the lyrics, and then Paul would put his drums down. So that was really the usual way it came together.
Interesting. Did you ever get to meet one of your guitar heroes like Eddie Van Halen? And if so, what was the story?
Okay, yeah. So funny story time.
Time to sit down with Uncle Mark.
Come on, kids, gather around. We're in Los Angeles. I can't remember the studio we're at. I know we were recording. I was doing an overdub. As a matter of fact, I was doing the guitar solo on Take What You Can for the first record. I was in the recording, the control room with our producer, our engineer, and Pat, the bass player. And I was just finishing up, and Pat comes walking in, and he goes, "Eddie Van Halen's in the lobby." And I'm like, "Yeah, screw you. He's not in the
whatever."
Lobby. I don't know if he was saying it to try to make me play better, if I was sucking or something. I don't know. So he's like, "Dude, Eddie Van Halen's in the lobby." And I look over at the engineer, and he goes, I don't know. And I said, man, so I take my guitar off, I throw it on the couch, I walk out the doors. Pat, I guess, follows me, and I get on the lobby, and I'm standing there, and I'm spinning around, and I spin around, and I look at Pat, and I go, he's not in the lobby, and he goes like this. So I turn around, and boom, he's like 2 feet in front of me. We both did the same face. You know that famous Eddie face where he goes, I did, because I was just frightened to death. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're standing in front of me 2 feet away. And then he looks down at my shirt and it said 1980 Van Halen tour concert shirt, you know, with the logo. And he did a double and he stuck his hand out and I reached over, I shook his hand. I was so nervous. And, he smiled, you know, he gave me that really nice smile, like, thank you. He didn't say a word. I didn't say a word. And then he walked away and I turn around and look at Pat with like deer in the headlights look. And Pat goes like this. Oh my God. Dude. Why didn't you invite him into the studio? Why didn't you, give him your phone number or something? I mean, what are you, stupid? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I met Eddie Van Halen. Yeah, that blew me away.
Oh, what's funny is, in this camera shot, look who it is right back there. There he is.
I see him. That's the pose. We have the same picture. I have it in my studio. Yes.
This is coming from John, but one day you got to watch out for the end of one of Marc's videos because I want Marc to tell the David Lee Roth bathroom story.
Oh, boy. We got so many of these funny stories that just happen at different times. And we were trying to make a list of them all. And it's just crazy. It's like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that.
A lot of fun stuff coming on Marc's YouTube channel. And cool, man. I appreciate it, buddy. As always, this is just an honor.
I appreciate you.
Just an honor, man, to do this. And can't wait for people to see it. And this will be out in all the places that you find Marc. And yeah, man, we'll talk to everybody soon. So thank you.
All right.